The sky above Earth burned red. It had been burning for 6 months now, ever since the Vrax fleet arrived and started dropping their weapons. Cities that once held millions of people were now just empty shells. The aliens didn't want to talk. They didn't want peace. They only wanted humans gone. Commander Day-Wan stood deep underground in what used to be Seoul. The command center around him buzzed with activity, but everyone knew the truth. They were losing. No, worse than that. They had already lost. The question now was how long they could survive before the end came. "Another colony just went dark," said Ji-Woo, looking up from her screen. She was the tactical officer, the one who kept track of all their remaining forces. Her eyes were tired. Everyone's eyes were tired these days. "That's all of them now. We're the last ones left." Day-Wan nodded slowly. 17 years. That's how long the war had lasted. 17 years of watching humanity get pushed back, step by step, world by world. First, the outer colonies fell. Then the stations around Mars, then the moon. Now the enemy sat in orbit around Earth itself, and there was nowhere left to run. The Vrax were perfect killers. They were bigger than humans, stronger, and their technology was far ahead of anything Earth had ever built. They moved from star to star, wiping out any species they found. Humans were just another number on their list. Number 18 to be exact. But there was something the Vrax didn't know. Something happening in secret facilities all across the ruined planet. Deep in the mountains, far from the bombed cities, volunteers were lining up. Soldiers who had watched their friends die. Parents who had lost their children. Anyone who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. They were joining something called Project Retaliation. Hyun-Woo was one of them. He had been a soldier in the Orbital Defense Force, one of the troops who jumped from ships to fight on enemy vessels. His whole team died on Titan 3 years ago. He was the only survivor, and that only because a piece of debris knocked him unconscious, and the Vrax thought he was already dead. Now he stood in a white room with a dozen other volunteers. A doctor explained what would happen to them. The words were technical, but the meaning was simple. They would be changed. Their bodies would be rebuilt, made stronger and faster. Their minds would be altered to process information like computers. They would become weapons. "The pain will be extreme," the doctor said. Her name was Eun-Mi, and she looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. "Many of you won't survive the process. Your bodies might reject the changes, but if you do survive, you'll be able to fight the Vrax on equal terms. Maybe better." "What are the odds?" someone asked. 60% of you will live through it," Eun-Mi answered honestly. 40% won't." The room went quiet. Those were terrible odds. But Hyun-Woo looked around at the other faces and saw the same thing he felt. It didn't matter. Doing nothing meant certain death. This way, at least, there was a chance to hurt the enemy before the end. "I'm in," Hyun-Woo said. "Me too," said another voice, then another. Within minutes, everyone in the room had agreed. The process started immediately. Hyun-Woo was led to a chamber that looked like a medical pod. He lay down on the cold metal surface, and machines began to move around him. Needles pierced his skin. Something cold flooded into his veins. His spine felt like it was on fire as metal interfaces bonded to his nervous system. The pain was worse than anything he had ever felt. Worse than being shot. Worse than the time he broke 3 ribs in a crash landing. This was pain at a level that made him want to scream, but his voice didn't work anymore. The machines had paralyzed him so he wouldn't hurt himself while they worked. He could feel his body changing. His bones grew denser, harder. His muscles tore apart and rebuilt themselves, stronger than before. His eyes burned as new lenses formed over them, letting him see in ways humans were never meant to see. His brain felt like it was being rewired, connections forming faster than he could understand. Time stopped meaning anything. Was it hours? Days? He couldn't tell. All he knew was pain and change, over and over, until finally the machine stopped and the pain began to fade. Hyun-woo opened his eyes. The ceiling above him looked different, sharper. He could see individual scratches in the metal panels, could count the rivets holding them together, could hear conversations happening 3 rooms away. "Welcome back," said Dr. Eunmi. She was smiling, but it was a sad smile. "You made it. You're one of the first." Hyun-woo sat up. His body felt strange, like it belonged to someone else. He was stronger. He could feel it in every muscle. When he moved fast. Too fast. He almost fell off the medical pod because his reflexes were so much quicker than before. "How many?" he asked. His voice sounded different to his own ears. 7 out of 12 in your group," Eunmi said. "The others didn't make it." Hyun-woo closed his eyes. 5 people dead. 5 volunteers who wanted to fight but never got the chance. He would remember them. They all would. Over the next few weeks, more volunteers went through the process. Thousands of them, hidden in facilities the Vraks hadn't found yet. The survival rate stayed around 60%. It was horrible, but it was also necessary. The survivors trained together, learning what their new bodies could do. Tai Sung, a sergeant who had fought on Mars, could now run at speeds that would have broken his old legs. Bo-ra, a training officer, found she could process tactical information faster than the best computers. Jin-ho, a captain, discovered his reflexes were so fast he could dodge bullets if he saw them coming. They were becoming the assault units, humanity's last hope, their final weapon against an enemy that seemed unstoppable. Above them, the Vraks continued their bombardment. They thought they were winning. They thought humanity was finished. They had no idea what was coming for them. In the command center, Daewon watched reports come in from all the training facilities. The numbers were growing. Soon, very soon, they would have enough. Enough to launch the counterattack. Enough to show the Vraks that humans didn't give up. Ji-woo stood beside him, reading the same reports. "Do you think it'll work?" she asked quietly. Daewon looked at the screens showing Earth's ruined surface, looked at the alien ships in orbit, looked at the countdown timer showing when their supplies would run out. "It has to," he said, "because if it doesn't, we're done." But deep down, Daewon felt something he hadn't felt in years. Something dangerous and powerful. He felt hope. 3 months passed while the world continued to die. The Vraks dropped their weapons on cities every single day. Paris was gone. Mumbai was gone. New York was a crater. But deep underground, something new was being born. Dr. Eunmi worked 20 hours a day in the facility they called Darwin Base. It was hidden in the Australian desert, buried so deep that even the Vrak scanners couldn't find it. She moved between medical pods, checking on the volunteers who were going through the transformation process. The changes they made to human bodies were extreme. Before the war, such experiments would have been illegal. Crimes against nature, people would have called them. But there was no law anymore. There was only survival. And survival meant pushing the human body far beyond its normal limits. The new soldiers could run 3 times faster than Olympic athletes. Their bones were reinforced with a carbon structure that made them nearly unbreakable. Their eyes could see in complete darkness. Their ears could hear a whisper from 100 meters away. Their skin was tougher, their muscles denser, their reflexes impossibly quick. But the most important change was in their brains. The neural augmentation system let them think faster, process information like computers, and control their emotions. Fear could be turned off. Pain could be ignored. Anger could be amplified to levels that made them unstoppable in combat. They called this the Rage Protocol. It was the most dangerous part of the augmentation. When activated, an assault unit soldier became a pure fighting machine. No hesitation, no mercy. No stopping until the enemy was destroyed or they were. In testing, soldiers under the Rage Protocol had done impossible things. One soldier had torn through a steel door with his bare hands. Another had kept fighting after losing an arm, not even noticing the wound until the fight was over. A third had run for 6 hours straight without rest, chasing a target across the desert. Yunmi watched these results with mixed feelings. She had created monsters. But they were monsters that humanity desperately needed. Sergeant Tae-sung was running the obstacle course when Yunmi came to observe. He was one of the most successful transformations they had achieved. His enhancement level was higher than 90% of the other soldiers. She watched him move through the course. He jumped over walls that were 3 meters high. He crawled through tunnels filled with simulated poison gas without breathing. He shot targets in total darkness, hitting every single one. His time through the course was 14 minutes. Before the war, the record had been 45 minutes, and that was with full lighting and no hazards. "How do you feel?" Yunmi asked when he finished. Tae-sung barely looked tired. His breathing was steady, his heart rate only slightly elevated. "Strong," he said. "Powerful. Like I could fight 100 Vraks and win." "Could you?" she asked. He thought about it. "Maybe not 100, but 10? 20? Yes, I think so." That was the answer she needed to hear. One assault unit soldier could do the work of 20 normal humans. They had created almost 5,000 assault units across all the hidden facilities. That meant they had the fighting power of 100,000 soldiers. Maybe more. But the cost had been terrible. For every soldier who survived the transformation, another died during the process. Their bodies rejected the changes, or their hearts gave out, or their brains couldn't handle the neural augmentation. They died in the pods, and their bodies were buried in unmarked graves. Yunmi tried not to think about the numbers. 4,000 soldiers had died to create 5,000 assault units. 4,000 volunteers who gave their lives hoping to save humanity. She carried the weight of every single death. Training Officer Bo-Ra ran the combat simulations. She was an assault unit herself, one of the first to successfully complete the transformation. Now she taught the others how to use their new abilities. "You're faster now, but that doesn't mean you're invincible," she told a group of new soldiers. "The Vraks are still dangerous. They're still bigger and stronger than you in raw power, but you have advantages they don't." She activated a hologram showing a Vrax warrior. The aliens were huge, almost 3 meters tall, with 4 arms and armored skin. They looked unstoppable. "They're slow," Bo-Ra continued. "Their reaction time is half a second. Yours is 0.08 seconds. That means you can shoot them 6 times before they even realize they're under attack. Use that advantage." She showed them footage from the early battles, before the assault units existed. Human soldiers shooting at Vrax warriors, their bullets bouncing off the armored skin. The Vraks moving through human defensive positions like they weren't even there. "This is what happened when we fought them normally," Bo-Ra said. "We lost. Every single time. But now—" She switched the hologram to show simulations of assault units fighting Vraks. The enhanced humans moved like lightning, dodging plasma fire and striking at weak points in the alien armor. Joints, eyes, the soft tissue at the neck. Places where even Vrax armor couldn't fully protect them. "Now we can win," Bo-Ra finished. "But only if you fight smart. Only if you use your speed and your enhanced thinking. Never fight a Vrax in a straight power match. You'll lose. Fight them with speed, precision, and rage." The soldiers watched carefully. They were learning how to be weapons, how to kill an enemy that had killed so many humans. Young-Sik trained separately from the ground forces. He was a pilot, one of the few who had been selected for the flight program. Flying the new strike craft required even more extreme enhancements than regular combat. The acceleration forces would kill a normal human. Even an assault unit soldier would struggle. The strike craft sat in a hidden hangar, sleek and deadly. They were built for one purpose: to break through the Vrax orbital blockade and attack the enemy fleet directly. It was a suicide mission. Everyone knew it. The pilots volunteered anyway. Young Sik climbed into his fighter and ran through the pre-flight checks. His neural interface connected directly to the ship's systems. He could feel the engines like they were part of his own body, could sense the weapons, the shields, the navigation. He and the ship were one. "How's it feel?" asked the maintenance chief. "Like I was born for this," Young Sik answered. And maybe he was. Maybe all of them were. All the assault units, all the enhanced soldiers, all the volunteers who had given up their humanity to save humanity. They were weapons now. Living, breathing, thinking weapons. But they were weapons with a purpose. Above them, the Vraks continued their attack. They controlled the orbital space around Earth. They occupied the major cities. They thought the war was almost over. They thought humanity was beaten. In 2 weeks, they would learn how wrong they were. Commander Dae-Wan called a meeting of all the unit leaders: Tae-Sung, Bo-Ra, Jin-Ho, Hae-Wan, Young Sik, and dozens of others. They gathered in the main command room, these soldiers who were no longer quite human. "The attack begins in 14 days, Dae-Wan told them. "We hit them everywhere at once. Ground forces strike their occupation zones. Pilots attack their orbital fleet. Every assault unit, every weapon, everything we have, we throw it all at them and we don't stop until we win or we're dead." "What are our odds?" someone asked. Dae-Wan looked at Jiwoo. She pulled up the tactical analysis. Numbers scrolled across the screens. "Honestly, we'll probably lose 70% of our forces in the first day," she said. "Maybe more. The Vraks still outnumber us." "They still have superior firepower. This isn't a guaranteed victory." "Then why fight?" another voice asked. "Because dying on your feet is better than dying on your knees," Tae-Sung said quietly. "Because even if we lose, we make them pay for it. We make them remember us." The room was silent. Then one by one the soldiers nodded. They would fight. Not because they would win, but because they were human, and humans didn't give up. Not ever. The Vraks never saw it coming. For 17 years, they had fought humans and won every battle. They knew how humans fought, knew their tactics, knew their weaknesses. Humans were soft, slow, and fragile. Easy to kill. The Vraks had destroyed 17 other species before humanity. This was just another job. That confidence would be their downfall. The attack started at dawn in Beijing. The Vraks' occupation force was conducting routine patrols through the ruined city. 50 warriors, heavily armed, moving in standard formation. They had done this exact patrol every day for 3 months. Nothing ever happened. Then the ground exploded beneath them. Assault units burst from hidden tunnels, moving so fast they were almost invisible. Captain Jin-Ho led the first wave, his enhanced body covering 30 meters in less than 2 seconds. His rifle fired in controlled bursts, targeting the weak points in Vraks' armor that Bo-Ra had taught them to exploit. The Vraks tried to respond, but they were too slow. Their weapons tracked targets that were already gone, shooting at empty air while the humans danced around them. Jin-Ho activated his rage protocol, feeling the chemical surge through his system. Fear vanished. Pain vanished. Only the mission remained. He jumped onto a Vraks warrior's back and drove his combat knife into the joint where the alien's helmet met its armor. The blade found soft flesh. The warrior fell. Jin-Ho was already moving to the next target. Around him, his squad fought with the same brutal efficiency. They moved like a pack of predators, coordinating without words through their neural links. Every soldier knew what the others were doing. Every attack was planned 3 moves ahead. The Vraks fought like individuals. The assault units fought like a single organism. The battle lasted 4 minutes. When it ended, all 50 Vraks warriors were dead. The human casualties, 2 soldiers wounded, none killed. Jin-Ho stood among the bodies, his breathing steady despite the intense combat. The rage protocol faded, and normal thinking returned. He looked at what his unit had accomplished and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Victory. In Tokyo, Lieutenant Heiwan was leading a different kind of attack. Her target was a Vrac supply convoy, moving through the city carrying ammunition and equipment to the occupation forces. Intelligence said the convoy was lightly guarded, only 20 warriors protecting 30 transport vehicles. Heiwan's unit of 15 assault units was hidden in the ruins of a shopping district. They waited until the convoy was in the perfect position, surrounded by tall buildings on both sides. Then they struck. The first transport exploded as a magnetic mine attached to its undercarriage. The convoy stopped, confused. The Vrac's warriors jumped out, looking for enemies. They should have looked up. Heiwan and her squad dropped from the buildings above, falling 5 stories and landing on top of the transports. Their enhanced bodies absorbed the impact easily. Before the Vracs could react, the humans were among them. Heiwan fought with a pair of vibroblades, weapons that used ultrasonic vibration to cut through almost anything. She moved between the Vracs warriors like a ghost, striking and dodging, too fast for them to hit. Her neural augmentation processed the battle in real time, showing her every threat, every opportunity. One Vracs warrior managed to grab her arm. In a normal fight, that would have been the end. The aliens were incredibly strong. But Heiwan activated her rage protocol and pulled free with raw power that shouldn't have been possible for someone her size. She drove both blades into the warrior's chest and moved on to the next target. The battle was chaos. Vrac's weapons fired in all directions, hitting their own people as much as the humans. The assault units used the confusion, staying mobile, never presenting an easy target. They flipped transport vehicles, used them as cover, destroyed them to block the convoy's escape. 18 minutes later, the convoy was destroyed. All 30 transports were burning. All 20 Vrac's warriors were dead. Heiwan's unit had lost 3 soldiers, but they had accomplished their mission. More importantly, they had cut off the Vrac's supply line to half the city. All across Earth, the same story played out. In London, in Cairo, in Mexico City, in Seoul. Assault units struck at Vrac's positions with speed and violence the aliens had never experienced. Human forces were attacking, not defending, hunting, not hiding. The Vrac's responded with overwhelming force, sending reinforcements to every attacked position. But that was part of the plan. Every warrior the Vrac's sent to the ground was one less defending their orbital fleet. In the command center, Daewon watched the tactical displays light up with successful strikes. The ground offensive was working better than he had hoped. But this was just the distraction. The real attack was about to begin. "Are the pilots ready?" he asked Ji-woo. "Launch facilities report all systems green," she answered. "They're waiting for your order." Daewon took a deep breath. This was it, the moment that would decide everything. If the orbital assault failed, the ground victories would mean nothing. The Vrac's would simply bomb the planet from space until nothing lived. "Give the order," he said. "Launch everything." Deep in the mountains, hidden launch facilities opened. Massive doors that had been sealed for months suddenly split apart, revealing the strike craft within. Hundreds of them, sleek and deadly, each one piloted by an assault unit who had volunteered for what everyone knew was a one-way mission. Young-sik sat in his cockpit, feeling his neural interface sync with the ship's systems. Around him, other pilots did the same. No one spoke. There was nothing to say. They all knew the odds. Most of them would die in the next hour, but some would get through. Some would reach the Vrac's fleet, and that would be enough. The launch order came through his neural link. Young-sik didn't hesitate. He fired his engines, and the strike craft leaped forward, accelerating at forces that would have killed a normal human. His enhanced body handled it easily, his augmented brain processing the speed and the tactical data flowing through his systems. The craft burst from the mountain launch tube and shot into the sky. Behind him, hundreds more followed. The largest airstrike in human history, aimed at an enemy that controlled space. The Vrac's orbital sensors detected them immediately. Alarms sounded throughout the fleet. Defense systems activated. The massive alien dreadnoughts began moving into position, their weapons tracking the approaching human fighters. But the humans weren't flying like normal pilots. They pushed their ships to limits that should have torn them apart. They flew patterns that seemed impossible, dodging targeting locks through pure skill and enhanced reflexes. They came in from every direction at once, making it impossible for the Vraks to focus their defenses. Young Six's tactical display showed enemy fighters launching to intercept. He ignored them. His mission wasn't to fight other fighters. His mission was to reach the dreadnoughts. Plasma fire filled the space around him. Ships exploded to his left and right as pilots died, their sacrifice buying time for others to get through. Young Six flew through the debris field, his reflexes guiding him around obstacles faster than conscious thought could manage. He saw his target, a Vrax dreadnought, massive and powerful, its weapons firing at the approaching human ships. Young Six armed his missiles, locked onto the ship's reactor core, and fired. The missiles streaked toward the target. Point defense systems tried to shoot them down. 2 missiles exploded. 3 made it through. They hit the dreadnought's hull and detonated, their warheads designed specifically to penetrate Vrax armor. The explosions tore into the ship's reactor. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire dreadnought came apart in a massive fireball that lit up the orbital space like a second sun. Young Six flew through the debris, already targeting the next ship. His missile racks were empty, but his guns still had ammunition. He aimed for the engines of a destroyer, firing in controlled bursts, then dove away as the ship's point defense tried to track him. Around him, the battle raged. Human fighters swarmed the Vrax fleet like angry insects, striking and dodging, too fast and too many to stop. Dreadnoughts exploded. Destroyers broke apart. Cruisers tried to retreat and found human ships blocking their escape. Some assault unit pilots, their weapons exhausted, simply rammed their fighters into critical systems on enemy ships. They ejected at the last second in armored suits, floating in space and watching their sacrifice create explosions that tore through Vrax vessels. On the ground, Taesung watched the orbital battle through his tactical display. Every explosion in space was another victory. Every destroyed Vrax ship was one less threat to Earth. "We're actually doing it," said one of his squad members. "We're winning." Taesung didn't answer. The battle wasn't over yet. Winning one fight didn't mean winning the war. But for the first time in 17 years, humanity had shown the Vrax that they could be hurt. And if they could be hurt, they could be beaten. The counter-strike had begun, and Earth was done being prey. The Vrax fleet was burning. Ships that had seemed invincible just hours ago were now drifting hulks, their reactors offline and their crews dead. But the battle was far from over. The aliens were adapting to the human tactics, coordinating their defenses, making it harder for the strike craft to get through. Young Six fighter took a plasma hit to the port side. Alarms screamed in his cockpit as systems failed. His neural interface showed critical damage to the engines. He was losing power, losing altitude, falling back toward Earth's atmosphere. "Fighter 739, you're hit," came Ji-Woo's voice through the communication system. "Return to base for repairs." "Negative," Young Six said. He looked at his tactical display and saw a Vrax destroyer moving into position to fire on a cluster of human fighters. "I still have 1 missile left." He pushed his dying fighter toward the destroyer, using what little power remained. The ship shook as it accelerated, pieces of armor breaking off and spinning away into space. Young Six locked his last missile on the destroyer's bridge section and fired. The missile flew true, slamming into the destroyer and detonating. The explosion tore through the ship's command center. Without leadership, the destroyer's weapons stopped firing, its crew confused and leaderless. Young Six fighter finally gave out. The engines died completely. He was now just drifting in space, his ship a useless piece of metal. He activated his emergency beacon and waited. Either someone would pick him up or he would run out of air. Either way, he had done his job. The battle continued around him. Human fighters pressed their attack despite heavy losses. They had destroyed 9 of the Vrak's dreadnoughts and damaged a dozen more. The alien fleet was retreating, pulling back to a safer orbit where they could regroup. But Commander Day Wan had anticipated this. Hidden in the debris field of Earth's destroyed orbital stations, stealth ships waited. They had been there for months, their crews living in the dark and cold, waiting for this exact moment. Now they powered up their systems and revealed themselves. The Vrak's fleet suddenly found itself caught between 2 forces, the strike fighters ahead of them and the stealth ships behind. It was a trap, carefully planned and perfectly executed. The Vrak's commander realized the danger too late. The fleet was boxed in, unable to retreat without exposing their vulnerable engines to the stealth ships, unable to advance without flying into the swarm of human fighters. They tried to fight on both fronts, but their coordination was breaking down. Sergeant Tae Sung watched the orbital battle from his position on the ground. His orders had just come through. New mission. Boarding action. The stealth ships were going to attach to the Vrak's vessels and send in assault unit Marines. Their job was to take the ships from the inside. "Are they serious?" one of his squad members asked. "We're going up there?" "That's the order," Tae Sung said. He checked his weapons and his armor. "Load up. We move in 5 minutes." The squad boarded a transport that would take them to one of the stealth ships. The ride through the atmosphere was rough, the transport shaking as it climbed toward orbit. Tae Sung watched his squad. They were scared. He was scared too, but fear was just another thing they had learned to ignore. They docked with the stealth ship Phantom 3. The captain briefed them quickly. Their target was a Vrak's heavy cruiser. The stealth ship would attach to the hull, cut through, and the Marines would flood in. They would fight their way to critical systems and disable the ship from within. "How many Vrak's crew on board?" Tae Sung asked. "Approximately 300, the captain answered. "You'll be going in with 20 Marines. Good luck." 20 against 300. Terrible odds. But assault units were used to terrible odds by now. The stealth ship moved toward the Vrak's cruiser, its hull absorbing sensor scans, invisible to the alien detection systems. They attached to the side of the massive ship and began cutting through the armor. The process took 10 minutes while the battle raged around them. Finally, the hull breached. "Go! Go! Go!" Tae Sung shouted, leading his squad through the opening. They emerged into a Vrak's corridor, the ceiling so high that it was clearly built for the 3-meter-tall aliens. Alarms were already sounding. The Vrak's knew they were being boarded. The first warriors came around the corner, weapons raised. Tae Sung's squad opened fire, their enhanced reflexes allowing them to shoot accurately while moving at full sprint. The Vrak's fell, but more were coming. "Activate Rage Protocol," Tae Sung ordered. "We fight through to the reactor core." The chemical surge hit his system. Fear vanished. Pain vanished. All that remained was the mission. Tae Sung charged forward, his weapon firing in controlled bursts. Beside him, his squad did the same. They moved like a wave of destruction through the ship's corridors. The Vrak's tried to stop them. Warriors set up defensive positions, fired heavy weapons, sealed blast doors. Nothing worked. The assault units were too fast, too strong, too focused. They dodged plasma fire, tore through barricades, and fought with a ferocity that the Vrak's had never encountered. In the cramped corridors of the ship, the aliens' size and strength meant nothing. The humans could move faster, react quicker, and fight in close quarters with deadly efficiency. Every corner became a kill zone. Every corridor ran red with alien blood. Tae Sung lost track of time. He just fought, moving forward, always forward, toward the reactor core. His tactical display showed that they had lost 6 Marines. 14 remained. Not enough. Never enough. But they kept going. They reached the reactor chamber. Massive Vrak's warriors guarded it, the elite troops, bigger and better armored than the regular soldiers. Tae Sung didn't hesitate. He pulled his last grenade, threw it into the chamber, and dove for cover. The explosion tore through the guards. Before the smoke cleared, Tae-sung and his squad rushed in. The remaining guards tried to stop them, but the humans were unstoppable now. They fought with hands and feet when their weapons ran empty, using their enhanced strength to tear through armor and flesh. The last guard fell. Tae-sung stood in front of the reactor controls, breathing hard. His armor was damaged, his weapons were empty, and he had wounds that would have killed a normal human. But he was still standing. "Plant the charges!" he ordered. His demolitions expert set the explosives on the reactor core. Enough explosive to tear the ship apart from the inside. They had 2 minutes to get out before detonation. The squad ran back the way they had come, fighting through any vraks that got in their way. More Marines fell. 10 left, then 8, then 6. Tae-sung grabbed a wounded soldier and carried him, refusing to leave anyone behind. They reached the breach point just as the charges detonated. The entire ship shuddered. Lights failed. Artificial gravity cut out. They pulled themselves through the hole in the hull and back onto the stealth ship. "Detach! Now!" Tae-sung shouted. The stealth ship pulled away from the cruiser. Through the viewport, they watched the wrack ship tear itself apart, explosions running along its length before the whole vessel broke in two. Tae-sung looked at his squad. 6 survivors out of 20. Terrible losses. But they had destroyed a heavy cruiser with just 1 squad. Across the battle space, other boarding teams were doing the same thing to other ships. The Vrak's fleet was dying, not from overwhelming firepower, but from something they had never expected. Humans who refused to quit. Humans who would sacrifice everything for victory. Humans who had learned that when you're cornered, you don't surrender. You fight back harder than ever. In orbit, Young-sik was picked up by a rescue shuttle. He watched the battle from the shuttle's windows. The Vrak's fleet was retreating now, the few ships that could still move pulling back, trying to escape. But the human forces pursued them. Strike fighters harried the fleeing ships, stealth vessels fired torpedoes, and on the ground, assault unit forces destroyed every Vrak's installation they could find. After 17 years of losing, humanity was finally winning, and they had no intention of stopping. The battle lasted 14 hours. When it finally ended, the sky above Earth looked different. For the first time in 6 months, there were no Vrak's dreadnoughts blocking out the stars. The alien fleet was broken, scattered, running for their lives. Of the 43 massive warships that had enforced the orbital blockade, only 7 escaped. The rest were debris now, floating in space around a planet that had refused to die. Humanity had paid a terrible price for the victory. 60% of the strike fighters never came back. Half of the boarding teams died on enemy ships. But they had won. Commander Dae-won stood in the command center, looking at the tactical displays that finally showed green instead of red. Around him, the command staff was celebrating. People were crying, laughing, hugging each other. After 17 years of losing, they had finally won a battle. But Dae-won knew the war wasn't over. The Vraks would regroup. They would call for reinforcements. They would come back, and next time they would be ready for the assault units, unless humanity did something to make sure they never wanted to come back. "Get me a communication link to the Vraks network," Dae-won ordered. "Use the equipment we captured from their ships." Ji-woo looked at him, confused. "What are you planning?" "We're going to send them a message," Dae-won said. "One they'll never forget." On the ground, the Vrak's occupation forces were being hunted down. Without orbital support, without supplies, without any way to escape, they were trapped on a planet full of very angry humans. The assault units showed no mercy. They had watched their world burn for 17 years. They had lost families, friends, entire cities. Now, it was payback time. Captain Jin-ho led his unit through the ruins of Beijing, tracking down the last group of Vrak's warriors in the sector. His squad moved silently, using their enhanced senses to locate the enemy. They found them hiding in an underground shelter, 30 warriors who had sealed themselves in when the orbital fleet retreated. Jinho's squad surrounded the shelter. They could have blown it up from the outside, buried the Vraks alive. But that wasn't the point. The point was to show the aliens what happened when you pushed humans too far. They breached the shelter and went in. The fight was short and brutal. The Vraks fought hard, but they were outnumbered and outmatched. Within minutes, all 30 were dead. Jinho stood among the bodies and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no joy, just emptiness. "Is this what we've become?" asked one of his soldiers, looking at the carnage they had created. Jinho thought about it. Yes, this was what they had become. Killers, weapons, monsters. But they were monsters because they had to be. Because the alternative was extinction. "Yes," he said quietly, "this is what we are now, and I'm okay with that." In the command center, Dr. Eunmi was assembling the message that Daewon wanted to send. She had footage from the battle. Human fighters destroying Vrak's dreadnoughts, assault units tearing through enemy defenses, Marines standing victorious on the bridges of captured ships. She edited it together into something that would terrify anyone who watched it. But that wasn't enough. Daewon wanted more. He wanted the Vraks to understand exactly what they had awakened when they attacked Earth. "Show them the production facilities," Daewon said. "Show them how many more assault units we can create." Eunmi pulled up footage from the training centers. Thousands of volunteers lined up, waiting their turn for the transformation process. The message was clear. This wasn't the end of human resistance. This was just the beginning. Jiwoo added tactical analysis to the package. Estimates of how many assault units humanity could produce in a year. Projections of human military expansion. Threat assessments that showed humanity wasn't just defending anymore. They were preparing to attack the Vrak's home systems. It was all exaggerated. The truth was that Earth was still badly damaged, still struggling to survive. But the Vraks didn't need to know that. They needed to believe that humanity was an unstoppable force. The message was ready. Daewon stood in front of the camera and recorded his statement. He spoke slowly and clearly, making sure every word would be understood. "You came to our world believing we were weak," he said. "You killed billions of us. You destroyed our cities. You thought you could make us extinct like you did to 17 other species. You were wrong." He gestured to the screens behind him, showing the destroyed Vrak's fleet. "This is Earth. We don't surrender. We don't give up. When you corner us, we don't beg for mercy. We come for you. And we don't stop until you're destroyed." He let that sink in, then continued. "We have created an army that can fight you on equal terms. We can make more. Many more. And we will. We're going to take the war to your home worlds. We're going to show you what it feels like to watch everything you love burn." He leaned closer to the camera. "This is your only warning. Leave human space. Never come back. Because if you do, we won't just defend ourselves. We will hunt you. We will find your worlds. And we will do to you what you tried to do to us." The message ended. Jiwoo transmitted it across the Vrak's communication network, making sure it would reach every colony, every fleet, every world in their empire. Hours later, they received a response, not from the Vrak's command, but from individual ships and colonies. Some were threats, promising revenge, but others were different. They were afraid. The Vraks had never lost before, never been defeated, never faced an enemy that could hurt them so badly. The message had worked. They were scared. In the weeks that followed, humanity began to rebuild. The assault units helped with the recovery, using their enhanced strength to clear rubble and repair infrastructure. But they also continued training. Continued preparing, because the war wasn't over. Lieutenant Haewon stood on the roof of a damaged building in Tokyo, looking up at the stars. Young-Sik joined her, his arm still bandaged from his injuries during the orbital battle. Do you think they'll come back? Haywan asked. Maybe, Young Sik said. But if they do, we'll be ready. Will we ever be normal again? She asked. After everything we've become? Young Sik thought about it. They weren't human anymore, not really. They were something new, something created by war and desperation, but they were also something powerful. No, he said honestly, we'll never be normal again. But maybe that's okay. Maybe normal humans couldn't have survived this. Maybe we had to become something else. Tae-sung and Bo-ra stood in one of the training facilities, watching new volunteers go through the transformation process. The war had changed them all, made them harder, made them capable of terrible things, but it had also made them survivors. Do you regret it? Bo-ra asked. Becoming this? Tae-sung looked at his hands, these hands that could bend steel, that had killed hundreds of Vrax warriors. These hands that would never be quite human again. No, he said, I regret that it was necessary, but I don't regret doing it. Dr. Eunmi continued her work, improving the transformation process, reducing the mortality rate, making the assault units even more effective. She still carried the guilt of all those who had died in the pods, but she also knew that their sacrifice had saved humanity. Commander Dae-won stood at the window of his office, looking out at Seoul. The city was damaged but still standing. Humans were still alive, still fighting, still refusing to give up. His communicator beeped. A report from Deep Space Scouts. The Vrax fleet had retreated to their nearest major base, 200 light-years away. They were regrouping, but they weren't advancing. They were waiting. Good. Let them wait. Let them wonder when the humans would come. Let them be afraid for once. Earth would rebuild. Humanity would grow stronger, and when they were ready, they would take the war to the Vrax. Not for conquest, not for territory, but to make sure that no other species ever suffered what humanity had suffered. The assault units gathered at a memorial ceremony for those who had died during the battle, thousands of names carved into black stone, soldiers who gave everything to save their species. Jin-ho stood before the memorial and spoke for all of them. We were cornered, we were beaten. We should have died, but we didn't. We fought back, and we won. Not because we were strong, but because we refused to quit. That's what makes us human. Not our bodies or our DNA. It's our refusal to accept defeat. He looked at the other assault units around him. They tried to make us extinct. Instead, they made us evolve. They created something they can't defeat. They created humanity's future. The ceremony ended. The soldiers dispersed. Life on Earth continued. And in the darkness between stars, the Vrax watched and waited, knowing that they had awakened something terrible, something that would hunt them until the end of time. Humanity had been cornered. Humanity had struck back, and humanity would never stop.